All right, we have a red hot request to go over exercise number 7 in the book. It should be number 3 in Cengage. It's ABC overhead calculation. So it's number 7 in your book. And again, we're on chapter 4, which is our ABC costing. Try to switch my font. Okay. So in this problem, I do like to jump to the requirements because a lot of these give so much detail, and unless you know what you're actually looking to do, I think it takes more time to read, know the requirement, reread. So start with the requirement and then read. So the requirement, on a basis of an activity-based approach, determine the total amount of overhead that should be assigned to firm and extra firm mattresses. So here we're looking for overhead. Okay, so now let's read through the problem. So we have the Bouncy Baby Crib Mattress Company sells firm and extra firm mattresses. So let's picture, as everybody knows, have a 2-year-old at home. We have our little crib here with our mattresses. So this one's firm. Then we have extra firm. My daughter has a extra firm mattress. That's what apparently they recommend, but it could just be because it's more expensive. Okay, so we've got our mattresses. The company's president, Anna Greer, we like to see women presidents, has become interested in the possibility of improving company performance by more closely monitoring overhead costs. So remember, all of these costing processes that we're looking at is how overhead is allocated. And what do we know about ABC costing? It is a better, more exact way to allocate your overhead. Because why? It's going through the activity cycles. So it's breaking out much more detail per process. She has decided to adopt an activities-based costing system for the current year. Last year, the company incurred $2 million in overhead costs related to the following activities. So they've already broken out the activities for you. You have materials processing, firmness testing, customer calls. They give you what the allocation base is, and they tell you what the overhead cost is. Then we move on, and they tell us during the year, 100,000 parts were handled, 75,000 for firm mattresses, 25,000 for extra firm mattresses, 20,000 firmness tests were conducted and breakout, 10,000 customer calls with the breakout. So again, we're back to trying to come up with the basis of an activity-based approach. On the basis of activity-based approach, determine the total amount of overhead that should be assigned to firm and extra firm mattresses. So what's the first step? We have to come up with the predetermined overhead rate by process. So the very first step is to come up with this predetermined overhead rate by process. By activity. So they have given us the total overhead cost by activity, and they've given us what the activity is in total during the year. So we're going to break it out and do the materials purchased, processed, which was 140,000 is the total overhead cost, or 1.4 million, divided by the actual activity during the year, and they say 100,000. So when you're coming up with the predetermined overhead rate, do it by total. Don't do it by the breakout. Here is the total predetermined overhead rate. So the 100,000 parts were handled. The allocation base for materials processed is number of parts. So if 100,000 parts were processed, that should come out to $14 per part handled. Okay, so that's the first one. Then we need to do the firmness test. we've got firmness testing. And they've told us that the total overhead that needs to be allocated, or that happened during the whole year, is $400,000. And this is based on number of tests. So we look at our further information, and they tell us 20,000 firmness tests were conducted. So that's our base. So our predetermined overhead rate for firmness testing should come out to $20 per test. And then the last activity that we have are customer calls. We've got customer calls. And for this, they tell us 200,000 was the total overhead cost for customer calls, and they tell us the base is the number of customer calls. We go back, and it says 10,000 customer calls were answered. We've got 10,000 calls. So our predetermined overhead rate for number of calls should be $20 per call. But that's not all. What they're asking us is, on the basis of an activity-based approach, determine the total amount of overhead that should be assigned to firm and extra firm mattresses. So we have our firm mattress here. I don't know, what do you prefer, firm or extra firm? I have a pillow top mattress, so I don't really like firm at all. There you have it, firm and extra firm. And now we simply have to break it out by process per product. So now you can take this predetermined overhead rate and apply it to the actual product. So we have materials purchased. I keep saying purchase processed. Okay. We've got our firmness testing. And we have our customer calls. Now for the firm mattresses, no matter what, the materials processed is going to be based on $14 per part handled for firm and extra firm. So we know what our rate is for firmness testing. Each is going to be assigned $20 per test. And then for customer calls, we have $20 per call. So that's a piece of it. Now we just need to assign the actual activity per product. So it tells us for parts handled, 75,000 were for firm. So we're going to multiply that by 75,000 parts handled. So that comes out to $1,050,000. Okay. For extra firm, go back to the problem, and it tells us 25,000 parts were handled for extra firm. So the 14 times 25,000 should get us to 350,000. For firmness testing, it's based on tests that were conducted. For firm mattresses, it was 12,500 tests were performed, so that should come out to 250,000. And then for extra firm, 7,500 were conducted, tests were conducted. So that should come out to 150,000. Then for customer calls, this is based on per call, and it tells us customer calls that were answered were 7,500 for firm and 2,500 for extra firm. So for customer calls, we have 150,000 for firm and then 50,000 for extra firm. So now you simply add up these overhead costs that have now been allocated. For firm, sorry, I'll move it up here, we should get 1,450,000. And for extra firm, we should get $550,000. Now it's very important to me that you understand what this number represents. This is total overhead that is assigned to firm mattresses for the parts that were produced, and for extra firm, again, for the parts that were actually produced. The other thing to note is what was the total overhead to apply was $2 million, right? Overhead cost in total. They tell us last year the company incurred $2 million in overhead costs related to the following activities. I need you to know that these rates are estimates. This is a predetermined overhead rate. They don't know what the actual overhead is. But as you can see, 1.45 plus 550,000 gets you to that 2 million. So you're assigning the 2 million of overhead between firm mattresses, extra firm mattresses. And then part B is really just a quick test of your knowledge of how you can apply all of the information here that you just calculated so nicely, applying it to a quick specific mattress. So let's take a look at that one. I'm going to shrink this up. So we have, if a firm mattress requires 5 parts, 2 tests, and 1 customer call, then what amount of overhead should be assigned to that one mattress? So here you're just trying to figure out the cost of overhead per mattress. So if we say that, again, it's a firm mattress, and they tell us 5 parts, 2 tests, and 1 customer call. What was the predetermined overhead rate that we had come up with for these? It was $14 per part, $20 per test, $20 per call. We're using these same rates regardless of whether it's firm or extra firm. So we're going to take the 5 parts times $14 a part. That should come out to $70. And then we have 2 tests times $20 per test. Again, going right back up here with that we calculated. That should come out to $40. And then 1 customer call. Again, going right back up here, $20 per call times 20 should be $20. Add all of these up. You get a total of $130, and this is total overhead for the one regular firm mattress. So hopefully this makes sense. You know, you've got to remember the steps. First, figure out how to come up with the predetermined overhead rate by total activity. Remember, this is total. Then assign it to the products that you're actually referring to. And then just to understand how it all works. You know, what does it mean then when you're trying to apply just to one mattress using the same activity base multiplied by the predetermined overhead rate that you've calculated, and then you're just able to break it out by units. Okay, move on.